What is your full name?
My name is Kyle Ray Probst.
Thank you. Do I have your permission to record this interview?
Yes, you do.
Okay. Where and when were you born?
Where and when?
Yes.
I was born here in Midway, over in the old family home, on 4th West and 1st North, on March the 2nd, 1938.
Who else was in your family?
There were 10 of us. Do you want all their names?
No, just tell us about your family.
Well, my father's name was Nephi and my mother's name was Eliza Elizabeth Beck Probst. She was from Spring City. She had 10 of us children. I'm number 8. There's still 3 of us living. I had a sister die about a month ago that was 90 in a rest home over in Heber.
Were there any traditional names in your family? Like you mentioned Nephi. Were there other Book of Mormon names or anything like that?
One brother was named Evan Nephi after Dad.
Mm-hmm.
No, there was no other.
Okay. What type of work did your parents do?
We had a dairy farm.
Okay.
We milked cows. We owned all of Lime Canyon. That's up.
Oh yeah, I know where that.
Yeah, we had 800 acres up there. We cleared the. There was a man out north of Midway, where the mountain spa is now. His name was Kurt Roth. He was a German, old German guy, and he had a big caterpillar with tines on the back, and he'd go across. We'd cut down the oak trees, and then he'd come across and pull the roots out, and then we'd burn them, and that's how we cleared the land up there and hauled hay and grain and barley and oats, clear down to Midway. And John Bessendorfer's father and 2 other men owned a thrashing machine. And they'd go around in the fall and do the farmer's thrashing.
Did other family members live nearby?
We were related to almost everybody on my block. My grandmother and grandfather lived 1 block north of us. And my grandmother's sister lived just west of my grandmother, and her other sister lived right across the corner. She was a Huber, and the other sister I was just talking about was a Boss, Margaret Boss, and then Conrad Gertz, we used to call him Cooney, Uncle Cooney, he was the brother, so they come from Switzerland in 1890 and settled there. They called it Cousin's Corner. They had 44 children between the 4 of them.
Wow. Okay. What did the community look like outside of your family? In other words, outside of your family, what was the neighborhood like?
Well, like I say, we knew everybody. When I grew up in Midway, there was only 700 people here. And I knew everybody in town, but the people around, especially around us, we had cousins and neighbors that was close to us, and we would get together and play games at night and play basketball over one of the neighbors' garage, side of the garage where there was a basket put up there. And we just had a good time growing up.
How did your parents meet?
My father and mother were on a mission back in Wisconsin, the northern states. And
Both of them separately?
they were both on the mission together.
And so they were young.
At the same time, the same year. They were both born in 1900. My mother was born June the 7th and my father June the 17th. And they met there, and she was from Spring City down in Utah. And Dad was kind of what they call a presiding elder. And he fell in love with her, and he told the mission president he better transfer him somewhere. And the mission president said, he said, I'm having feelings for her, Sister Beck. And the mission president said, well, just make things tough on her. So she thought Dad hated her. he gave her tough assignments, but they both got released at the same time and come home. And he on purpose, he gave her one of his top coats. And when they got to Salt Lake, he had an excuse to go down and pick it up and meet her and meet my grandparents. And then sometime later they were married.
Where did your ancestors come from?
Well, on my mother's side, Denmark and England. On my father's side, Switzerland.
And about what year did they come to Midway, the first Swiss?
Oh, my grandfather came here in 1872, and my grandmother came in 1890. Like I say, she was a Gurch, and she was 17 when she got here, and my grandfather was 31. He'd build the house that they lived in later. He built it for a woman he was engaged to. He said she flew the coop, and so he married my grandmother, who was 17. They went to the Logan Temple to be married, and she didn't know any English at all. And but they had 11 children. I think she had a miscarriage or two, but they had a good family. All of their children was really did great in their lives.
Did your family name change when your family immigrated to the United States?
No.
They had the same. Okay. So when they came here, they spoke Swiss?
German, Swiss, German, yeah.
And
Now on my mother's side, I don't know if you want me to tell you anything about her, but
Please.
she, like I say, they came from Denmark and England, and my grandfather, her father was born on the banks of the Mississippi River, coming to Utah, and they made the trail to Utah and then went down and settled in Spring City. They had a big home down there, and they had 10 children, my grandfather and grandmother on my mother's side.
Wow. What games did you play when you were young?
Well, we'd go out in the road. Of course, there was no oil road then. There was all gravel or dirt. We'd play marbles and run sheepy run, handy eye over, and games like that. And we just had a good time. Sleigh riding in the winter.
What toys did you have?
What toys?
Yeah, what kind of toys? Did you have a bike?
I was just reading this morning in my history there, and our father and mother, they didn't have a lot of money because of the 10 children, and I come right at the end of the Depression, and one time the three of us boys, there were 6 boys and 4 girls in our family. Our 3 youngest boys, myself and my younger brother and my older brother next to me, we got a bicycle for Christmas, and it had wooden wheels, not tires, but wooden wheels and tires. And we had a pretty good time with that. So that's probably the best gift we ever got.
Cool.
I had, my brother herded sheep for one of my uncles. And one time he found a little fawn deer that the mother had left because it had a broken leg. And so he brought it home and we put a splint on it and it grew up to be a pet. I've got pictures of me and my brothers and sisters with our arms around it. It'd follow us to school and we'd have to make it go home. But it was just like a dog. It followed us everywhere. In fact, we got mad at it. We'd go up on where Henry Kohler lived, up on the hill. We had a little ski run there, and it would come up and follow us down and ruin our trail, ruin the skiing.
Did you have any hobbies?
Not when I was young. As I got older, I did.
Like what?
Rock hunting. I was a rock hound, and I still am. And I've cut and polished rocks and made jewelry and things. But hobbies, when we were little, I was the champion marble player in the county. And so that was kind of a hobby. In fact, a friend of mine and I was partners, and we got so many marbles we didn't know what to do with them, because if you played marbles, you got to keep them. Mm-hmm. And I had a gallon metal can full of them. I didn't know what to do with them, so I went home and buried them in the ground. And we don't have the home anymore, and I wished I had them. They're still there somewhere in the ground. But I don't. That was years when I was young. That's a long time ago. Mm-hmm. Somebody else has the property now.
Did you ever collect anything like baseball cards or anything?
Rare coins. Mm-hmm. And I didn't do baseball cards, but I got a lot of. I had a friend that went to, he was an archaeologist, and he went to Egypt every year and uncovered things from BYU. He'd represent BYU, and I've got some, he knew a guy that had a lot of old Greek coins, and they would date way back, and they're quite valuable now, so I got several of them, and that was kind of a good hobby.
Describe your first school.
We didn't have kindergarten. I went to first grade. It was over where the city buildings are now. Mm-hmm. And it was 2-story. We had to go and be there in the morning, and we walked to school because we just lived 2 blocks from it to the west. Mm-hmm. And my uncle was the principal, so I had to be towed the line. And he's the one that later on in Swiss days was created the Swiss choir, Clarence Probst. And Jack Keeney, who was a guy that was kind of crippled, he made a lot of the music up. And my uncle, we were singing one day in class, and I wouldn't sing, and he said, "I'm going to keep you here till you sing." And I said, "Well, you have to keep me out of school then," and he did. And I said, "What are you going to tell my dad when I'm not home in time to milk the cows?" He finally let me go, but then later on, we become really good friends. He was a great uncle. Good man.
What subjects did you study in school?
Reading, writing, and arithmetic, and things like that. That's in grade school, you mean?
Also later on. What did you go to college?
No, I didn't.
What subjects really interested you?
There was a north shop, they called it, and a south shop. South shop was woodworking. and I really liked that. North Shop was what they do welding and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I had a brother older than me that would become a great welder, but that didn't interest me. I did mostly, and I still make furniture.
By hand?
Uh-huh,
Do you have a shop?
I do.
Wonderful. Did you have any really influential teachers?
Yes, I had one who's, well, a couple. One was Eldon Wright. He was our coach. He was in the Navy. When he got released, he was become our coach. And he taught us, he was a champion boxer in the Navy. And so he'd encourage us to box. And so I got pretty good at it. And one day I had a guy a year older challenged me to a boxing match, and he'd been down to Stan's Club in Provo, which taught boxing. And I told the coach, I'm not going to box him, he'll kill me. And he said, oh, you can beat him. No, I can't. So he said, you go out there and do it. And so he was left-handed, like I am, and a year older than me. And we got out there and was only there. He threw a punch at me and I blocked it, and then I hit him in the chin and knocked him out. And he fell on the floor, and the coach came running out and had some smelling salts and put it under it, and he finally come to, he was glassy-eyed, and he set him up on that hardwood floor like this, gym floor, and he said, Neil, are you all right? He said, no. And he fell right back on his head. And then they had a game called boxing basketball, and it taught you not to be greedy with the ball. You had to pass it to somebody. The only time you could hit somebody is when they had the ball. And you had one glove on, boxing glove, and one to play the ball with. I remember one kid went up and he was not sharing the ball, and he went up for a layup, and I hit him, and it knocked him out. And the people said the next day, you killed him, he didn't come back to school. And they said that scared me to death after that, so I didn't do too much more boxing. And I wrestled too. And he had another coach that was good at wrestling. Our school took the state quite often.
Did you belong to any clubs or organizations?
I was on the city council. I was also on the Boosters Club, they called it, for a while.
When did they start Swiss Days?
They started it in 1953, I think it was. They didn't call it Twist Days then, it was Harvest Days.
Oh.
And they...
Were you part of it?
Well, I was a young kid then. Mm-hmm. And, well, in school. And they had different activities. They'd put all the cars in a circle there at the town square, and then they'd bring cabs in and let you ride cabs, and they give you a prize whoever could stay on the cab. No ropes to hold on to, just. And then they had what they call a grease pole, and it was in the ground, and it was up about probably 10 feet in the air. And in the top of it, they had a hole, and they had money in there. And so they greased it down, and you had to try to crawl up there. So I remember one kid trying, and he kept going up there, and finally he couldn't make it, but he got all the grease off, and some other kid came up and went right up and got the money. but he gave some of it to the other kid, which was good. And then they had these big carp fish, they call it the big ditch, the ditch that runs across. It's still there. They put it in a cement thing now, but on the west side of the town square. And they put these big fish in there, and they had blocked off a screen in both ends, and they were big ones. And they were what, carp, but they had tags in them. Those who could get the tag, they could keep, they'd get a prize. And then they had a greased pig, and they'd turn it loose, and that kids would try to catch it, and we'd get.
This is all during Swiss days?
It was, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Or the harvest days, or what we call it then,
days,
yeah. Yeah.
What holidays did your family celebrate?
Most of them we do now. We had, of course, there's new ones now that we didn't have then, but in February it was George Washington and Abraham Lincoln's birthday. In fact, in 1948, we had a big winter. The snow was about 5 feet deep, covered all the fences up.
How old are you?
I'll be 87 in a month, less than a month.
Okay.
And they covered all the fences, and school, you couldn't get to school because it was too much snow. And so we had chickens and pigs and calves to feed and things. And we were out of school, and my father told my brother and I to go shovel off the chicken coop. And it had snow about that deep on it, and they was afraid it was going to cave in. And we had an old fence, a board fence, a slab fence that butted into the chicken coop. The chicken coop come down this way, and it butted into the end. And then right here in this corner was an old horse-drawn hay mower. And my brother was up on there shoveling already, and we used that fence to go up to, like a ladder, to get up on there. And as I was going up, I slipped and fell, and as I fell, I turned, and I fell on the lever that raises and lowers the blade. It's about, that shape and about that thick, and it caught me right there in the side. And I was in so much pain, and I went to leave, and my brother called me a name and said, "Get back here, you blank pretender," and he thought I was just trying to get out of work. Well, I went up to the coal shed, and I had to urinate, and it was straight blood. And I went in the house and told my mother, and she told me, and my dad came in and said, "What's the matter?" And she told him, and he said, "Oh, it's probably just a cracked rib. He'll be all right." And I had to go to the bathroom again, and it was blood again. So they took me to the hospital, and they couldn't figure out what was the matter because the pain was here. And they gave me a blessing, and the doctors couldn't figure it out. And they had a doctor from Heber named Neff Hicken, who was a specialist, kidney specialist, and he came up the next day and found out it was my kidney. So he operated on me, and my mother watched it, and when they took it out, it was split in 3 pieces. Said it looked like a watermelon when you drop it on the cement, all jagged. But later on, when I worked in Salt Lake, I had a kidney specialist, and he said, "That's the worst pain you can be in." And he said, "How long was it before they operated on you?" And I said, "A day, 24 hours. And he said, "You shouldn't be here." He said, "A third of your blood supply goes through their kidneys. You should have bled to death." But I'm still here. I just have one kidney. And I was almost 10, just going on 10.
So they took out the kidney.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, you made it 87 years.
Well, 77. with one. So school was out for Lincoln's birthday also, and then of course we celebrated the 4th of July like everybody else, and the 24th. Christmas, New Year's.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Pretty much the same.
Yeah.
Okay. Tell us about the house you grew up in.
The house I grew up on had, it was 2 stories, and there was 1 bedroom downstairs. We had a front room.
Did you guys build it?
No, my father bought it from a friend of his,
I see.
or a man who, Bueller's built it, the name of Morris Bueller's family, and Dad bought it from him, but it had a front room and a dining room. Front room was off the side a little bit and had glass doors. You could go in there, and then the dining room, and then a kitchen. We always ate in the kitchen unless a lot of people come. And then a bathroom on the side, and two bedrooms upstairs. And when it would get cold in the winter, which sometimes we'd get 30 and 40 below zero, and we had a coal cook stove in the kitchen that we used wood and coal in it, and it had a water heater jacket, they call it, on the side to heat the water with. And then in the front room we had a heaterola. It had a lid you could put up, and it also used wood and coal. And at night it gets so cold and no heat upstairs. So we'd have to we'd get a rock, cobblestone, and put it on the stove and let it get warm, and then put a towel around it to keep our feet warm. And then 3 of us, 3 brothers, would sleep in 1 bed, and we just have to huddle up together. I remember putting one leg here, and my brother put his knee there, and then mine on him on top, and huddle up to get warm. We used to joke and say if we ever had to go to the bathroom, it'd freeze before it'd get to the floor.
Okay.
Carl, is that house still there? Is the house that you grew up in?
Yes, it is. It is. My father and mother used to play Mr. and Mrs. Santa Claus too. They'd go to Sears every year, and Sears Roebuck in Salt Lake, and go the day after Thanksgiving and come back after Christmas. And they knew everybody in the county, and when the kids would come and Dad would ask him, "How's your grandpa so-and-so?" Then the kids that was wondering about if Santa was real or not, they believe it. So they were good at it.
What were meal times like with your family?
Meal
times.
Well, we did different what they do today. We had breakfast, dinner, and supper.
You didn't bring your cell phone to the table and.
No, they didn't have cell phone. We had a telephone. You pick it up, and the operator would say, "Number, please," and you'd give a number, and then they'd connect you with something. Sometimes there were 3 or 4 people on that same line, and you'd hear them. You could listen to some pretty good conversations. But we had a breakfast, and of course my father, we'd raised all of our own food, most of it. We had a huge garden, almost half a block long. We'd have carrots, peas, and beans, and potatoes, and we had a cellar, and we put the potatoes, and cabbage, and we put the potatoes in a bin in there, and down under the ground. We had pot rock all the way around it, and then there were steps going down into it, and the door closed. And we had carrots and potatoes in that, and then we'd make sauerkraut and pound on it, and they used to kid us that we would get in there with our feet and tromp on it, but we just used big poles and things, and then it was wooden barrel, and then you'd put a lid on it with a rock on top of it and leave it there all winter and go down when you wanted sauerkraut. And Dad, we'd kill pigs, and Dad would make his own sausage. He'd take casings and put them in it. We had a smokehouse, and he'd smoke it. The length of the sausage would be about that long, And he sold it at Swiss Days all the time, and people come from all over. He sold out in about 20 or 30 minutes. They couldn't keep it in it. Cudahy in Salt Lake wanted to have the recipe, but he never would give it to him. And I still make some, but we'd have salad.
Do you have his recipe?
Oh yeah,
Cool.
but he made us promise he wouldn't give it to anybody. but sauerkraut and that sausage is really good. But we'd have eggs. We had our own chickens. We had 200 chickens. We had 100 for 150 to eat, and then 50 for laying hens. So we had our own eggs. We'd have our bacon. Dad would cure the bacon and the hams, and we always had plenty to eat. We ate 3 meals, big meals. Lunch or dinner we called it, was as big as our supper. We'd always have potatoes and gravy and meat and vegetable, and plenty of milk, and we'd make our own butter and churn our own ice cream. And pretty self-sustaining.
Yeah. What foods did you like the best?
What's what?
What foods did you like the best?
Well, the one I didn't like was hominy,
Oh, okay.
and
That's corn, right? Isn't that
kind of puffed. Yeah, it's horrible. But and I didn't like your made mush.
So what would be a typical breakfast that you'd have?
Yeah. Oh, what?
What would be a typical breakfast?
Bacon and eggs and sausage sometimes, potatoes, fried potatoes. And at night, Mother could roast have a good roast and potatoes and gravy again, and so it was really good. She'd bottle. We'd go deer hunting up Snake Creek always, and get a big deer, and then we'd eat some of it fresh, and then but she'd bottle a lot of it, put it in bottles and put it up, and they made really good sandwiches. And she bottled peaches and pears and get them down in Provo, and she'd put up, 40 or 50 or 150 or 200 bottles of each every fall for our big family. And then she'd take eggs down to the store and trade it for things we didn't have, like sugar and a few things like salt.
Flour.
We sold a Winder Dairy in Salt Lake. They had a milkman had come by with his truck and get our milk in 10-gallon milk cans.
Mm-hmm.
We had a vat, we called it, where there's cold water in there, and we just put them in there after we'd milked the cows. And then an inspector would come around.
And you milked them by hand?
We did first, and then we got automatic milkers.
Did you have any pets?
Had a pet dog and some cats. And I had a good horse, a little one that I called Smokey. She was a small one. She was got her out off the desert, and she wasn't very big, but I never rode with a saddle. Just always rode bareback.
She was a wild horse when you got her?
Well,
off the
we
desert?
bought her, yeah. And my uncle got her. He had sheep. He had about 10,000 sheep. He had the most sheep of anybody in the country. And we bought her from him, and she'd become my horse. And boy, she was smart though. I'd ride her bareback, and my grandmother lived up the road a block. We'd take her cows to the pasture. We rented a pasture from Snyder's, which is now the homestead. We rented the pasture around there. We'd take her cows up to Crick Hill and up Homestead Drive and take them there. And sometimes I'd eat them and ride her standing up bareback. And that wasn't good enough, so I had to make her run. And then that wasn't good enough, and I got a culvert about this big so she'd have to jump over it. My grandmother come and seen my dad and said I was going to kill myself, but I never did. But she'd get out in the water, And if it was hot, she'd just start pawing the water and it would come up all on you. And when you take the cows to the pasture, if they wasn't going fast enough, I'd just kick her in the flank and she'd reach up and bite them right up on the top of the tail.
Did you ever have an outhouse that you had at your house?
Oh yeah, we did first, yeah. And we had
What year did you finally get a bathroom indoors?
indoors probably about 19, maybe 45, I don't know.
Really?
And we didn't have, like I say, a lot of hot water, but we had a bath once a week in a big tub in the kitchen. And that was Saturday night. And so we'd be clean to go to church on Sunday.
Wow, that's great. What type of clothes did you wear most of the time?
Hand-me-downs. I had older brothers, and Mother would sew a lot, and she'd cook. I remember her making bread 3 times a week, about 10 loaves at a time. She was a great cook, one of the best there was. In fact, Henry D. Moyle, I've got a letter from him to her that I've got now. It says that he'd eaten with kings and queens and in palaces all over the world, but he'd never tasted better food than from her humble kitchen.
That's good.
And clothes we'd wear just like anybody else, but a lot of times milking cows, you know, you'd get a little manure on you once in a while.
So when did you get a car?
My father?
You. When did you
Oh,
get
me?
your first car?
I got it when I was, just out of high school. So it was probably in 1957, 56 or 57. And I had Hollywood deep tone mufflers on it, pipes, and some people still in Heber can still remember they could hear my car from Midway clear over to Heber.
So what sort of entertainment did you like the best?
Well, one of the things I liked a lot was when the Harlem Globetrotters would come to Utah. We'd go watch them play. You ever heard of them?
Oh, yeah.
They had, the big center was named Goose Tatum, and the little guard that could dribble around, and his name was Marcus Haynes.
Mm.
And that was really fun to watch them. They were showboat. They were really good players. They could beat a lot of professional teams
I
today.
remember them.
They were all black.
Mm-hmm.
And I enjoyed that. I enjoyed going watching people box too. We went to Salt Lake and watched, who was it? It was a championship fight, but I enjoyed that. I forgot even who it was.
When did you get your first TV in your home?
The first TV I remember seeing was while I was on my mission in 1958. My brother worked for Xerox, and he lived, I was in Northern California, and he lived there, and he had a color TV, and it was amazing. So that was the first time I saw one.
And when did your family get one?
Sometime after that,
Mm-hmm.
where the post office is now, there was a guy by the name of Roy Lurcher, and he lived up here on First North and about Fourth West or Fourth East, and they had 12 kids, and he worked a lot of places, but he rented a little place there, and he called it B.R. Lowe, and he sold TVs in there. And I think that's where my parents got theirs later.
What was your first job? Not counting working on your own family farm.
Well, we had part-time jobs. We'd clean the ditches, the irrigation ditches,
Mm-hmm.
and each person that owned shares in the ditch would have to pay an assessment. And so we'd work and we could get some of the money and then put the rest towards that assessment. Then I used to work for my uncle, docking sheep we called it. They'd catch the lambs and they'd have to castrate them and earmark them and brand them. And they usually used paint for their brand. And I remember they had these Mexican herders, or Basques, they called them, and they'd grab these lambs and they'd put the hind feet and the front feet together, and then they'd put them up on this thing on it, like a wooden thing about this wide and about that long, and they'd hold them there, and then somebody'd reach up and cut and then they'd squeeze up those two little nuts, and these guys would grab them with their teeth and pull them out and save some of them. They called them Rocky Mountain oysters. And they're good. They were good. I tried them. They were really good. And so we'd be the ones to put disinfectant and things on them, and then they'd turn them loose. But we had that job, and I worked for an uncle, or my wife's uncle, who built homes. I worked for him for a little while too, before I went on the mission.
When did you become a barber?
After I got back from my mission in 1960, I went to barber school. My brother had gone before, and we'd cut each other's hair and a few people before, and I kind of liked it, so I went to Salt Lake and went to barber school there. It took 6 months then to get through, and one of our instructors took a liking to me, and of course he heard that Bob's Barbershop up in Foothill Village was going to have a vacancy, and so I had to wait a few months before the one barber moved out on his own, and so I went up there and worked there for almost 5 years, and then I worked at BYU for 35.
Any famous people that you cut their hair?
I think all of them are famous in my way. I've got some pictures of little kids that I was cutting, and you know, I had a son-in-law that was going to the law review at BYU, and he was from Wyoming, and he rode down with me for a little while he was doing that. One night I was late. I had to stay over because I had 2 or 3 customers waiting, and one guy got in my chair and he started telling me about that his daughter had just come forth and said that a few years before they were camped out in his backyard, a bunch of girls, and this guy came in and raped her. And he said, and something about they finally caught him afterwards, a long time after. But my son-in-law, he says, "Why would he tell you that?" He just couldn't figure it out. And I said, well, because some people just want to confide in you, you know. And they just needed somebody to talk to. And so you become a kind of a counselor, and people share some of the things with you and share experiences. And I've cut a lot of the apostles' hair. I still do Elder Holland and his son Matt. I did Elder Ballard and who'd you call it? President Oaks. And then I've cut President Benson's hair, and David Haight, and I don't know, when you say famous, I don't know who.
Those are famous.
To us they are, but maybe somebody else they're not. But.
Okay, I got 2 more questions. I was curious on your diet. Is your diet about the same today as it was when you were growing up? Or have you changed your diet? Or would you make any recommendations, because you've lived, you know, a long, healthy life. What's your diet like now? You know?
It's different than when I was a kid, of course, because we ate so much, and my father weighed way too much. He was pretty heavy, but he had a heart attack because of it, and but I try to keep my weight down. I'm right now at my wrestling weight at 132, and I walk a lot. You do too,
Mm-hmm.
but I usually walk 2.5 to 3 miles a day.
I weigh the same as you do.
Good.
Yeah.
But are you tall? How tall are you?
5'6".
Yeah, you're taller. I'm 5'3".
Okay.
And so I get up in the morning and I'll have
What time do you wake in the morning?
about 5:30, and I'll get up. Well, I put the stuff on to cook, and then I go walk, and I come back and eat it. And I have rolled oats, and with dried cherries in it. I got down at Payson Cherry Farm. I got a place that I can buy dried cherries, and I put them in it, and then I buy these dried pineapple slices I can get down at Winco, and just cut them in half and put some of that in it. And then I get some strawberries and smash them up and put that on it, and a little...
Do you eat dairy foods like milk?
Well, I have a problem because of my kidney. I sometimes have high potassium. So I have to watch that I don't eat a lot of stuff with potassium, which is potatoes and
Bananas.
and avocados and beans and oranges, everything that's good.
Yeah.
But the last time I had it checked, it was pretty low, so I still watch what I eat because I don't want to overdo it.
Do you eat a lot of meat?
I eat quite a bit of meat.
Yeah.
My daughter out in the Uinta Basin, she raises cattle, and she just called me this morning and said, "How much meat you want?
Mm-hmm.
You know anybody that needs some?" And she gives each one of her sisters. I got 6 daughters, but she gives each one of her sisters a half a beef, and she's
So how many kids did you have?
7.
Mm. Good.
And so, yeah,
Okay, one last question. If you had to, give somebody words of wisdom, some pearl of knowledge for your kids and grandkids and whoever, what would it be? How to have a happy life?
to love people and to serve people. And to go out of your way to do things for those who can't do it. I go over to the rest home quite a bit, and I take people food, desserts that I make. I make cookies, and I make the best, people tell me, the best carrot cake in the world. And it's my own recipe, my own carrots. And so, yeah, I think to be of service to your fellow men, you're only in the service of your Heavenly Father.